Ladies and gentlemen, wealth is not something you chase because chasing implies separation. The moment you chase anything, you place outside yourself, and whatever is placed outside must always be pursued, never possessed. Conscious creation begins when you understand that wealth is not an object moving toward you from the outside world, but a condition that activates from within your awareness. When consciousness shifts, circumstances rearrange automatically. Most people exhaust themselves trying to earn, force, or convince life to give them more. They work harder, think faster, and push longer, yet feel something invisible holding them back. That invisible barrier is not lack of effort. It is lack of allowance. Effort without alignment creates resistance. Resistance delays outcomes. Allowance removes friction. Spiritual wealth operates under a different law than material striving. It responds to acceptance, expectation, and identity. When you internally accept abundance as normal, external reality adjusts to confirm it. This is not positive thinking, it is positional thinking. You are not hoping for wealth. You are assuming the position of someone for whom wealth is natural. Chasing money keeps you in a mindset of needing. Needing communicates absence. Conscious creation requires presence. Presence is the feeling that nothing is missing right now. When nothing is missing internally, nothing can be missing externally for long. People often misunderstand allowance as passivity. Allowance is not inactivity. It is relaxed certainty. It is moving without strain, choosing without fear, and acting without desperation. Desperation signals mistrust. Trust is the true currency of spiritual wealth. When your consciousness shifts, your behavior changes effortlessly. You stop over-explaining yourself. You stop rushing decisions. You stop tolerating situations that contradict your self-worth. These changes are subtle but powerful, and life responds to them immediately. Money follows clarity. Clarity comes from identity. If you secretly see yourself as someone who struggles, even success will feel temporary. But when you see yourself as supported by life, opportunities feel familiar instead of surprising. Spiritual wealth begins with the realization that supply is not limited. Limited thinking produces competitive behavior. Competitive behavior produces fear. Fear blocks flow. Conscious creation dissolves competition by revealing that abundance is not divided, it is multiplied through alignment. When you chase wealth, you are saying, I don't have it yet. When you allow wealth, you are saying, it belongs to me by order. The subconscious mind responds to the second statement without resistance. Your inner state is always the command. The outer world has no choice but to obey it. If your inner state is restless, your results will be unstable. If your inner state is grounded, your results become consistent. People who understand spiritual wealth stop measuring progress by time alone. They measure it by internal stability. When stability increases, manifestation accelerates. Time collapses when resistance disappears. Allowing wealth requires releasing guilt around receiving. Many people believe money must be earned through suffering. This belief creates struggle-based income. Conscious creators reject suffering as a requirement. They choose flow. When you allow wealth, you stop proving your worth. You already know it. Proof-seeking creates exhaustion. Knowing creates magnetism. Spiritual wealth is the ability to receive without tension. Tension repels. Ease attracts. Ease does not come from laziness. It comes from trust. The universe does not reward force. It responds to resonance. When your inner frequency matches sufficiency, sufficiency appears. You do not need to convince reality. Reality mirrors you. If you see lack, ask where you are withholding permission to receive. Allowance is permission without conditions. Many people say they want wealth but attach rules to it. After this, when that happens, once I'm ready. Conscious creation removes conditions. It assumes readiness now. When allowance replaces struggle, inspiration replaces pressure. Inspired action feels light, precise, and effective. Pressured action feels heavy and repetitive. Money arrives more easily when it is no longer idolized. Idolization creates distance. Neutral respect creates proximity. Spiritual wealth means trusting that life is cooperative, not adversarial. Once you assume cooperation, obstacles lose authority. Your role is not to manage how wealth arrives. Your role is to remain aligned with the state that allows it. Chasing keeps you future-focused. Allowing brings you into the present. Manifestation only occurs in the present. When consciousness shifts from wanting to expecting, results shift from delayed to natural. Wealth flows toward the version of you who no longer asks permission to receive it. The moment you stop chasing, life starts catching up to you. Allowance is not waiting, it is knowing, and knowing is the most powerful form of wealth there is. Your inner dialogue is not casual background noise, it is the architectural plan from which your life is constructed. Every sentence you repeat internally is treated as instruction, not suggestion. Reality does not debate your words, correct them, or delay them for moral review. It listens, accepts, and organizes itself accordingly. This is why two people can live in the same world and experience entirely different lives. The difference is not intelligence, luck, or opportunity. It is the conversation they are constantly having with themselves. Most people believe words matter only when spoken aloud. But the subconscious does not require sound. It responds to meaning, repetition, and emotional charge. A thought repeated often enough becomes a command. A command repeated with feeling becomes law. Once a law is established internally, the outer world has no choice but to comply. Your inner dialogue is always active, even when you are silent. It continues narrating, judging, predicting, and interpreting. If that narration is filled with doubt, criticism, or fear, though, tones become the framework through which reality expresses itself. Life does not punish you for negative dialogue, it simply agrees with it. When you say internally, "This never works for me," reality responds by arranging more evidence of failure. When you say, "I always struggle," struggle becomes familiar and repeatable. Familiarity is powerful. The subconscious prefers what is familiar over what is beneficial. This is why people stay stuck in patterns. They consciously want to escape. Their inner dialogue keeps reissuing the same blueprint. Conscious creation begins when you realize you are not a victim of circumstance but the narrator of experience. Narration shapes perception, and perception shapes response. Response shapes outcome. The chain always begins inside. Your inner dialogue is not about optimism versus pessimism. It is about assumption. Assumptions are quiet beliefs you stop questioning. Once something is assumed, it becomes invisible to the conscious mind but fully active in the subconscious. These assumptions quietly run your finances, relationships, health, and sense of self-worth. Many people try to change their lives by changing behavior, but behavior is downstream from dialogue. You cannot sustainably act against your inner script. If your inner dialogue says you are unworthy, success will feel uncomfortable. If it says money is unsafe, abundance will feel temporary. Reality will bend to restore internal consistency. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that words are seeds. Every internal word is planted into the fertile soil of the subconscious. The soil does not judge the seed, it multiplies it. You cannot plant corn and expect roses. Likewise, you cannot repeat inner statements of limitation and expect freedom. The most powerful statements you make are not emotional outbursts but casual conclusions. That's just how life is. People like me don't get ahead. Nothing ever changes. These statements are spoken without resistance because they feel true. Feeling true is enough for the subconscious to act. Reality is always trying to match your internal dialogue to maintain coherence. If your dialogue is conflicted, results are inconsistent. If your dialogue is calm and certain, results stabilize. This is why affirmations fail when they conflict with inner commentary. Saying, "I am wealthy," While internally muttering, "This is unrealistic," creates contradiction. The subconscious follows the dominant voice, not the louder one. Inner dialogue becomes dominant through repetition and emotion. What you repeat during stress, disappointment, or fatigue carries more authority than what you say when motivated. That is why unconscious speech matters more than conscious intention. People often say they want change, but their inner dialogue is devoted to explaining why change is unlikely. The subconscious hears the explanation, not the desire. It executes the explanation faithfully. Your reality is not delayed. It is echoing. What you see today is yesterday's dialogue returning as form. This means change begins the moment dialogue shifts, not when circumstances improve. When you observe your inner speech without judgment, you gain power. Awareness interrupts automation. Once interrupted, dialogue can be redirected. Changing inner dialogue does not require force. Force creates resistance. Replacement creates alignment. You replace criticism with neutrality, neutrality with expectation, expectation with certainty. The goal is not to hype yourself into belief, but to normalize new assumptions. When a thought feels normal, it becomes law. Inner dialogue also shapes what you notice. If your dialogue expects opportunity, you perceive openings others overlook. If it expects danger, you perceive obstacles others bypass. This is why spiritual wealth begins internally. Money follows confidence, clarity, and self-trust. These qualities are cultivated in dialogue, not circumstances. When your inner dialogue speaks support instead of struggle, life rearranges to justify that support. When it speaks order instead of chaos, life organizes. You are always instructing reality. Silence does not stop the instruction. It simply allows old scripts to continue running. The moment you choose your words consciously, you reclaim authorship. Reality is not asking you to be perfect, only consistent. What you say within becomes what you live within. The blueprint is already in use. Money does not respond to effort in the way most people are taught to believe. Effort alone can create movement, but it does not create stability. Stability comes from identity. The level of wealth a person sustains is directly tied to who they believe themselves to be, not how hard they work. This is why some people can lose everything and rebuild quickly, while others gain money once and never experience it again. The difference is internal position. Identity is the set of assumptions you hold about yourself that feel so normal you stop questioning them. These assumptions decide what feels natural for you to receive and what feels uncomfortable. Money always moves toward comfort. It avoids tension. If wealth feels foreign to your identity, it will arrive briefly and then leave, not as punishment, but as self-correction. Many people work endlessly, but secretly see themselves as someone who struggles, someone who must fight for every gain, someone who is always catching up. That identity creates a ceiling. No matter how much effort is applied, results hover near that ceiling because the subconscious works to maintain self-consistency. Money follows identity because identity dictates decisions, tolerance, confidence, and expectation. A person who identifies as abundant makes different choices without trying. They negotiate differently, wait differently, invest differently, and walk away differently. None of this feels forced. It feels natural because it matches who they believe they are. Effort can produce income, but identity determines retention. If your identity says, "I don't keep money," unexpected expenses will appear. If your identity says money comes and goes, instability will feel normal. If your identity says, "I am supported," support shows up repeatedly. Spiritual wealth is not about eliminating action. It is about eliminating contradiction between action and self-image. When effort contradicts identity, burnout follows. When effort aligns with identity, flow replaces strain. This is why sudden wealth often destroys people who are not internally prepared. The money exceeds their identity. The subconscious attempts to restore familiarity through sabotage, overspending, poor decisions, or avoidance. The system is not broken, it is protecting the self-concept. Money responds to how you see yourself in relation to life. If you see yourself as someone life must be convinced to help, money will be hard-earned. If you see yourself as someone life supports naturally, money will arrive with less resistance. Identity also controls how you respond to opportunity. Two people can receive the same chance. One acts confidently, the other hesitates. Hesitation is not lack of intelligence, it is misalignment with identity. The opportunity feels bigger than the self-image. When you upgrade identity, effort becomes efficient. You do less but receive more because your actions are precise. Precision comes from clarity. Clarity comes from knowing who you are. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that you must claim your divine inheritance. An inheritance is not earned. It is accepted. Acceptance is identity-based. You cannot accept what you believe you are unworthy of. Most people try to fix money problems by changing strategy. But strategy is secondary. Identity determines which strategies you trust, follow through on, and abandon. A wealthy identity trusts itself. A struggling identity doubts constantly. Money also responds to emotional identity. If you identify with stress, money will be linked to stress. If you identify with ease, money will be linked to ease. The subconscious pairs concepts based on emotional memory. Effort without identity change creates cycles. Work hard, achieve briefly, fall back. Identity change creates permanence. Identity is reinforced by inner dialogue, environment, and emotional reactions. How you talk about money casually reveals more than how you talk about it intentionally. Casual statements expose true identity. You cannot outperform your self-image for long. You can temporarily override it with adrenaline, motivation, or necessity, but the system will reset once pressure drops. This is why conscious creation focuses on becoming, not forcing. When you become the person who expects wealth, wealth becomes a byproduct, not a goal. Money follows identity because identity tells reality what role you play. Reality casts you accordingly. If you see yourself as a receiver, receiving feels normal. If you see yourself as a struggler, struggle feels honest. Shifting identity does not require pretending. Pretending creates tension. Identity shifts through assumption repeated until familiar. Familiarity creates comfort. Comfort creates allowance. Once allowance is present, effort becomes lighter. Light effort produces better results than heavy effort because it carries less resistance. Money does not reward exhaustion, it responds to alignment. When identity changes, you stop chasing money because money starts recognizing you, and recognition always precedes arrival. Conscious creation begins the moment you stop reacting and start directing, because reaction places you at the mercy of circumstances, while direction places circumstances at the mercy of your inner state. Reaction is automatic. It is conditioned, emotional, and rooted in past experience. Direction is intentional. It is chosen, calm, and rooted in awareness. The shift between the two is subtle, but it changes everything. Most people live in reaction without realizing it. They wake up responding to messages, obligations, moods, and memories. Their thoughts respond to yesterday's problem. Their emotions respond to external triggers. Their decisions respond to fear, pressure, or urgency. In this state, life feels unpredictable, overwhelming, and out of control, not because life is chaotic, but because the individual has surrendered authorship. Reaction is always backward-looking. It uses past evidence to justify present emotion. When something goes wrong, reaction asks, "Why does this always happen to me?" That question alone reinforces a powerless identity. Direction asks a different question. What do I choose to assume now? That question shifts authority inward. When you react, you are letting the outer world dictate your inner state. When you direct, you let your inner state determine how the outer world unfolds. The law responds to direction, not reaction. Reaction is noise. Direction is instruction. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that people experience repeated patterns because they repeat emotional reactions, not because fate is fixed. The same emotional response produces the same energetic instruction. Reality simply complies. If frustration is your default response, you instruct more frustration. If anxiety is your reflex, you authorize delay. The subconscious does not interpret reaction as resistance, it interprets it as preference. Directing does not mean controlling every detail. It means choosing the state from which details emerge. A directed state might be calm certainty, gratitude, expectation, or trust. Once chosen, the subconscious organizes perception, behavior, and opportunity to match it. The most important moment in conscious creation is the pause between stimulus and response. That pause is where direction becomes possible. Without the pause, reaction takes over. With the pause, you regain authorship. Even a few seconds of awareness are enough to change the outcome. Reaction feels justified because it feels true. Direction feels unfamiliar at first because it interrupts habit. The subconscious resists unfamiliar states. Not because they are wrong, but because they are new. Consistency turns unfamiliar into normal. Normal becomes powerful. Many people confuse directing with positive thinking, but directing is deeper than thought. It is a decision about identity. When you direct, you decide who you are being in the moment. Regardless of appearances, that decision becomes the command. If something unexpected happens, and you immediately react with fear, you teach the subconscious that fear is appropriate. If you choose steadiness instead, you teach the subconscious that safety exists even in uncertainty. The outer world responds accordingly. Reaction contracts time. It makes problems feel urgent and permanent. Direction expands perspective. It restores choice. This is why directed individuals appear calm in situations that overwhelm others. Calm is not ignorance, it is authority. Directing also changes language. Reactive language blames, complains, and predicts failure. Directed language is simple, neutral, and assumptive. This will work out. I am supported. There is order here. These statements are not hopes, they are instructions. The subconscious obeys the dominant state, not the loudest thought. If your dominant state is reactivity, occasional affirmations will not override it. Direction must be practiced in moments of emotional charge. Those moments carry the most creative power. When you stop reacting, you stop feeding old patterns. Patterns require emotional energy to continue. Starved of reaction, they dissolve. New patterns form when new states are sustained. Directing also restores responsibility without blame. Responsibility means responsibility, the ability to choose your response. Blame keeps you reacting. Responsibility frees you to direct. Many people wait for circumstances to improve before changing their state. Conscious creators reverse this order. They change the state first, allowing circumstances to follow. This feels risky to the reactive mind, which demands evidence before trust. Direction creates evidence after trust. Reaction narrows perception. You see fewer options. Direction widens perception. You notice opportunities that were invisible before. These opportunities did not suddenly appear. They became visible once your state allowed recognition. Life does not reward emotional intensity. It responds to emotional consistency. Reaction is intense but inconsistent. Direction is steady. Steadiness produces reliability. When you direct, you stop rehearsing problems. Rehearsal is a form of creation. The mind does not distinguish between imagined struggle and real struggle. Both instruct the subconscious. Direction replaces rehearsal with assumption. This does not mean suppressing emotion. Suppression creates tension. Direction means acknowledging emotion without letting it decide the narrative. You can feel disappointment without declaring defeat. You can feel uncertainty without predicting loss. The moment you realize the reaction is optional, you reclaim power. Optional means choosable. Choosable means creatable. Directing your state is an act of self-respect. It signals to life that you are no longer available for unconscious repetition. Life responds by offering new patterns. Conscious creation is not about forcing outcomes. It is about refusing to be forced internally. When inner force ends, outer force dissolves. You do not need perfect control to direct. You need awareness and willingness. Direction strengthens with practice. Each time you choose response over reaction, authority increases. Over time, direction becomes natural. What once required effort becomes instinct. At that point, creation feels effortless, not because nothing happens, but because you are no longer resisting yourself. Reaction makes life happen to you. Direction allows life to happen through you. And once direction becomes your default, reality has no option but to reorganize. Spiritual wealth means feeling supported before evidence appears. Because evidence is always a reflection, never the source. Most people reverse this order. They wait for proof before they allow themselves to feel safe, provided for, or supported. In doing so, they unknowingly delay the very evidence they are waiting for. Conscious creation works in the opposite direction. The feeling comes first. The structure follows. Feeling supported is not pretending everything is fine when it is not. It is choosing to rest in the assumption that life is not against you. Even when circumstances are unclear, this assumption is powerful because it removes inner resistance. Resistance is what blocks flow, not lack of opportunity. The subconscious mind responds to emotional states more than facts. Facts describe what has already happened. Emotional states instruct what happens next. When you feel unsupported, you signal threat. When you feel supported, you signal safety. The subconscious prioritizes safety. From safety, it allows expansion. Many people associate feeling supported with external validation, money in the bank, approval from others, or visible success. This dependency creates emotional instability because external conditions fluctuate. Spiritual wealth stabilizes feeling first, so circumstances lose power over your inner state. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that faith is not blind belief but confident expectation. Expectation is a feeling, not a thought. When you expect support, your nervous system relaxes. A relaxed system perceives more options, responds more creatively, and makes better decisions. Feeling supported before evidence appears feels uncomfortable at first because it contradicts conditioning. Conditioning says safety comes from control, accumulation, or certainty. Conscious creation teaches that safety comes from alignment. Alignment produces certainty from within. This is why people who feel supported take risks that others avoid. Not reckless risks, but intuitive ones. They trust timing, trust themselves, and trust that life will meet them halfway. That trust is not naive. It is practiced. Feeling unsupported creates hypervigilance. Hypervigilance narrows perception. Narrow perception limits opportunity. When you feel supported, perception widens. You notice synchronicities, invitations, and resources that were always present but previously invisible. Support does not mean constant comfort. It means underlying assurance. Even when challenges arise, the supported state interprets them as temporary and purposeful, not threatening. This interpretation preserves emotional energy. People often confuse support with rescue. Rescue implies helplessness. Support implies partnership. Spiritual wealth assumes partnership with life, not dependence on it. You move, life responds. You trust, life organizes. The reason evidence appears after the feeling is because feeling changes behavior. Behavior influences outcome. When you feel supported, you act differently. You speak with more confidence, wait with more patience, and choose with more clarity. These behaviors invite different responses from the world. Feeling supported also affects how you interpret delays. Instead of seeing delay as rejection, you see it as adjustment. Adjustment keeps trust intact. Rejection destroys it. Interpretation determines emotional continuity. Many people unknowingly sabotage progress because they feel unsafe during transition. Transition always lacks evidence because it is movement between states. Those who cannot tolerate uncertainty retreat prematurely. Those who feel supported persist calmly. Spiritual wealth is not denial of reality. It is dominance of inner state. You can acknowledge current fact without emotionally living inside them. Living inside facts creates stagnation. Observing facts while feeling supported creates momentum. The body responds to feeling supported with reduced stress hormones. Reduced stress improves cognition. Improved cognition improves decision-making. This chain reaction alone can change financial and relational outcomes. Feeling supported also changes self-talk. Instead of "what if this fails?" it becomes "I'll handle whatever happens." This shift removes fear of outcome. Fear of outcome paralyzes action. When you feel supported, you stop micromanaging life. Micromanagement communicates distrust. Distrust invites resistance. Trust invites cooperation. Support is not something life grants after you succeed. It is something you claim before you begin. Claiming support is an internal decision. Once made, it restructures experience. This is why spiritual wealth often looks invisible at first. The person feels rich before wealth arrives. They feel calm before stability appears. They feel guided before clarity is obvious. Outsiders misinterpret this as delusion. In truth, it is alignment. The universe responds faster to emotional states than verbal requests. Feeling supported is a state. It requires no explanation. It simply exists. When you wait for evidence to feel supported, you remain reactive. When you feel supported without evidence, you become directive. Directive states shape outcomes. Support also affects how you receive help. People who feel unsupported often reject assistance out of pride or fear. People who feel supported accept help naturally. Acceptance accelerates progress. The belief "I am supported" is not dependent on circumstances. It is independent. Independence creates stability. Stability attracts resources. Spiritual wealth teaches that support is constant even when form changes. A door closes, another opens. A plan dissolves, a better one forms. Feeling supported allows you to navigate these shifts without panic. You are not supported because everything goes your way. You are supported because you are never alone in your movement forward. When feeling supported becomes your default, evidence no longer feels urgent. Urgency dissolves. With it, resistance dissolves. Life mirrors the state you occupy most consistently. Feeling supported is not a conclusion you reach after success. It is the state that allows success to arrive. What you repeatedly assume becomes your financial atmosphere, because assumptions are the invisible climate in which money either thrives or withers. An atmosphere is not a single event. It is a constant condition. You do not notice air when it is balanced, but you struggle when it is polluted or scarce. In the same way, your financial life is shaped less by occasional thoughts and more by the steady assumptions you live inside every day. An assumption is not something you actively affirm all the time. It is something you quietly accept as true. Money is hard to keep. Something always goes wrong. I'll get by, but never ahead. These are not dramatic statements, yet they are powerful because they feel normal. Normal is the subconscious's favorite state. Whatever feels normal becomes protected and repeated. Your financial atmosphere influences how opportunities feel when they appear. In a scarcity atmosphere, opportunities feel risky, stressful, or suspicious. In an abundance atmosphere, opportunities feel natural, timely, and manageable. The opportunity itself may be identical. The assumption changes the experience. Many people focus on changing income without changing atmosphere. They earn more but feel no safer. They achieve more but feel no freer. This happens because the underlying assumptions were never updated. The environment remained tense, so money could not settle. Atmosphere also determines how you interpret events. An unexpected bill in a scarcity atmosphere confirms fear. The same bill in an abundance atmosphere feels like a temporary adjustment. Interpretation determines emotional reaction. Emotional reaction reinforces assumption. The loop continues. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that expectation is the law of increase. Expectation is atmospheric. It is not loud hope, it is quiet certainty. When you expect things to work out financially, you relax. Relaxation improves decision-making. Improved decisions create better outcomes. Outcomes then justify the original expectation. Assumptions are formed early, often unconsciously. Childhood observations, parental stress, cultural beliefs, and emotional experiences all contribute. If money was associated with conflict or fear, the atmosphere absorbs that tone. Later success does not automatically remove it. The subconscious does not care if an assumption is outdated. It only cares if it is familiar. Familiar assumptions feel safe, even when they are harmful. This is why people unconsciously recreate financial stress even after escape. Stress feels known. Changing atmosphere requires sustained new assumptions, not dramatic declaration. You do not storm a climate into changing. You gradually alter conditions. Repetition creates familiarity. Familiarity creates acceptance. Acceptance creates stability. Atmosphere also affects patience. In a lack-based atmosphere, waiting feels threatening. In an abundance atmosphere, waiting feels neutral. Neutral waiting prevents sabotage. Many financial setbacks occur not because of wrong action, but because of action taken too early out of anxiety. Your assumptions also influence your tolerance. What you tolerate financially reveals what feels normal. Late payments, undercharging, or chronic instability persist because they fit the existing atmosphere. Raising tolerance requires shifting assumption. When you assume there's always enough, you stop hoarding. Hoarding blocks flow. Flow requires trust. Trust is atmospheric. Atmosphere affects speech. Casual language reveals assumption more than intentional language. I can't afford that is not about money, it is about identity. It declares exclusion. I choose not to spend on that preserves agency and abundance. Your financial atmosphere influences who you attract. People, partners, clients, and collaborators respond to your emotional climate. Calm attracts reliability. Desperation attracts chaos. Money avoids emotional volatility. Volatility signals risk. Assumptions stabilize emotion. Stability invites consistency. Assumptions also determine how you respond to success. In a scarcity atmosphere, success creates anxiety about loss. In an abundance atmosphere, success feels normal and expandable. Normal success grows. Anxious success contracts. You do not need to know how money will come to shift atmosphere. Atmosphere responds to expectation, not logistics. Logistics follow later. Many people believe assumptions must be logical to be valid. The subconscious does not require logic. It requires repetition and emotional neutrality. The more neutral an assumption feels, the more powerful it becomes. For example, money supports me is stronger than I will become rich. One stabilizes atmosphere, the other creates pressure. Atmosphere is also influenced by what you consume mentally. Media, conversations, and environments reinforce assumptions. Chronic exposure to fear-based narratives strengthens scarcity atmosphere even in financially stable people. Silence can be powerful. Quiet moments allow you to notice the background assumption running your life. Awareness weakens automation. When you begin to assume support, solutions appear. When you assume obstacles, problems multiply. Life organizes to justify the dominant assumption. Atmosphere does not change overnight, but it changes reliably. Each time you respond from trust instead of fear, the climate shifts slightly. Over time, this creates a new normal. The goal is not to eliminate challenges, but to remove emotional threat from them. Challenges in an abundant atmosphere feel manageable. The same challenges in a scarce atmosphere feel catastrophic. Money does not demand perfection. It responds to consistency. Consistent assumptions produce consistent results. Your financial atmosphere also determines your sense of timing. In scarcity, everything feels urgent. In abundance, timing feels cooperative. Cooperation reduces stress. Reduced stress improves outcomes. Assumptions are self-fulfilling not because of magic, but because they shape perception, behavior, and emotional response simultaneously. Once atmosphere shifts, effort decreases. You do less but receive more because resistance is lower. Atmosphere is invisible but powerful. You cannot point to it, but you live inside it. What you assume repeatedly becomes the air your financial life breathes, and money always responds to the environment you create. The subconscious obeys emotion, not logic or desire, because emotion carries conviction. Logic explains, desire asks, but emotion assumes. Assumption is the language the subconscious understands. This is why people can logically know something is possible, desperately want it to happen, and still never experience it. The missing element, emotional agreement. The subconscious mind does not analyze facts. It does not evaluate probability or fairness. It accepts whatever is felt as true and organizes behavior, perception, and outcome around that feeling. Emotion is not decoration, it is instruction. Whatever emotion you consistently feel in relation to money, success, or opportunity becomes the command that shapes your experience. Many people desire wealth while emotionally rehearsing struggle. They imagine success, but the emotion underneath is anxiety, doubt, or urgency. The subconscious receives the emotional signal, not the image. It responds by creating circumstances that match the emotion: more urgency, more doubt, more instability. Emotion is powerful because it bypasses conscious filters. You can think something without believing it, but when you feel something, belief is already present. Feeling is belief in motion. That is why emotional memories shape identity more than intellectual lessons. This is also why repetition alone is not enough. Repeating words without emotional alignment creates little change. Repeating words with emotional neutrality is more effective. Emotional neutrality allows new assumptions to settle without resistance. Desire often carries tension. Tension signals absence. Absence tells the subconscious that fulfillment is not present. Logic may argue otherwise, but logic does not run the system. Emotion does. The subconscious cannot tell the difference between imagined emotion and real emotion. This is why visualization works only when it evokes the feeling of fulfillment. Without feeling, visualization is fantasy. With feeling, it becomes instruction. Florence Scovel Shinn emphasized that faith is not emotional excitement, it is emotional calm. Calmness communicates certainty. Certainty removes resistance. Resistance is the true obstacle, not lack of opportunity. Strong emotions like fear, guilt, or unworthiness override conscious intention. A person may consciously affirm abundance while emotionally feeling undeserving. The subconscious follows the emotional verdict. Emotion also influences what feels safe. The subconscious prioritizes safety over success. If wealth feels emotionally unsafe due to past experiences, beliefs, or association, the subconscious will resist it even if logic argues in its favor. This is why people self-sabotage at the edge of breakthrough. The emotional system detects unfamiliar territory and pulls back to restore comfort. Comfort is emotional familiarity, not improvement. To change outcomes, Emotional familiarity must be updated. This does not happen through force. Force creates emotional conflict. Conflict strengthens old patterns. Change happens through gentle repetition of new emotional states until they feel normal. Neutral emotions are especially powerful. Calm expectation, quiet trust, and relaxed certainty are ideal signals. They communicate, this is normal. The subconscious loves normal. Emotion also colors interpretation. Two people can experience the same delay. One feels rejected. The other feels guided. The emotion determines the story. The story determines the outcome. Desire alone creates longing. Longing keeps fulfillment distant. Emotional ownership brings fulfillment closer. Ownership is not arrogance, it is internal permission. Many people confuse excitement with belief. Excitement is unstable. It spikes and crashes. Calm confidence sustains. Sustained emotion creates lasting change. The subconscious also learns through emotional contrast. When you notice how fear contracts you and trust expands you, awareness grows. Awareness weakens automatic reactions. Emotional mastery does not mean suppression. Suppression traps emotion. Trapped emotion leaks into behavior. Mastery means allowing emotion without letting it define identity. When you allow fear without obeying it, its authority weakens. When you choose trust repeatedly, trust becomes familiar. Familiarity converts into assumption. Emotion determines timing perception. Fear makes time feel slow and threatening. Trust makes time feel cooperative. The same clock, different experience. This is why spiritual wealth is emotional wealth first. A person emotionally at ease can create financial ease faster than someone emotionally tense with more resources. Emotion also affects communication. People respond to emotional tone more than words. Calm attracts cooperation. Desperation repels support. The subconscious is always listening to how you feel about your future, not what you say about it. If the feeling is dread, outcomes align with dread. If the feeling is safety, outcomes align with safety. You do not need to feel joy constantly. You need to feel steadiness. Steadiness signals reliability. Reliability attracts flow. When emotion shifts, behavior shifts naturally. There is less overthinking, less rushing, less second-guessing. Action becomes intuitive. This is why conscious creation focuses on state, not strategy. Strategy without emotional alignment collapses. Emotional alignment generates strategy automatically. The subconscious does not ask for proof. It creates proof based on emotion. Whatever you feel most consistently becomes your instruction manual for life, and life follows it precisely. Gratitude collapses time and accelerates manifestation because gratitude places you psychologically and emotionally in the position of having already received. Time, as experienced in manifestation, is not linear, it's perceptual. What feels distant is what you emotionally place in the future. What feels present is what you emotionally accept as real now. Gratitude pulls desired outcomes out of the future and into the present state of consciousness. Most people practice gratitude as politeness toward the past. They are grateful only after something happens. This keeps creation slow because the subconscious receives the message that fulfillment is conditional and delayed. Conscious creation uses gratitude differently. It is gratitude in advance, not as fantasy, but as recognition of inevitability. When you feel grateful, your nervous system relaxes. Relaxation removes resistance. Resistance is the only true delay. The moment resistance drops, the subconscious has permission to reorganize reality faster. This is why people often experience sudden breakthroughs after giving up stress, not because they stopped caring, but because they stopped resisting. Gratitude shifts identity. A grateful person does not feel like someone waiting to be rescued. They feel like someone already supported. That identity alters decisions, posture, tone of voice, and patience. These subtle shifts create compound effects. Time stretches when you are anxious because anxiety monitors absence. It keeps checking for what is missing. The more you check, the longer it feels. Gratitude stops checking. When checking stops, time collapses. This is why people often say, "It happened when I stopped worrying about it." Worry is attention on lack. Gratitude is attention on sufficiency. The subconscious responds to sufficiency by multiplying it. Gratitude also rewires memory. When you focus on what has worked before, even in small ways, the subconscious updates its prediction model. It begins expecting support instead of struggle. Expectation shapes anticipation. Anticipation influences outcome. Many people resist gratitude because they believe it means settling. In reality, gratitude is expansion. It signals readiness for more. The subconscious interprets gratitude as capacity. Capacity attracts increase. Gratitude does not deny current challenges. It recontextualizes them. Challenges stop being proof of failure and start being steps within a larger pattern of support. This interpretation preserves emotional stability. Emotionally stable people manifest faster because they do not sabotage progress with panic. Gratitude is one of the fastest ways to stabilize emotion. Gratitude also neutralizes envy. Envy focuses on what others have. That comparison creates distance. Gratitude focuses on what is already present. Presence collapses distance. The subconscious learns through repetition of emotional states. Repeated gratitude trains the system to expect positive resolution. Expectation directs behavior subtly. How long you persist, how patiently you wait, how confidently you speak. Gratitude also affects language. You stop saying "I hope" and start saying "I know." This linguistic shift reflects an internal shift from desire to assumption. When gratitude becomes habitual, manifestation becomes less dramatic but more consistent. You no longer wait for miracles, you experience flow. Gratitude accelerates because it removes urgency. Urgency creates pressure. Pressure signals lack. Lack slows creation. This is why gratitude practiced during uncertainty is more powerful than gratitude practiced after success. During uncertainty, it contradicts fear. Contradicting fear weakens it. Gratitude also improves receptivity. Many people want abundance but subconsciously reject receiving. Gratitude softens resistance to receiving by making it feel deserved and safe. Receiving requires openness. Gratitude opens. Time is not shortened by effort. It is shortened by alignment. Gratitude is alignment with sufficiency. The universe does not measure how much you want something. It responds to how ready you feel to receive it. Gratitude says, "I am ready." And readiness collapses waiting. Detachment signals trust, and trust unlocks flow because detachment tells life that you are no longer gripping outcomes out of fear. Gripping creates tension. Tension restricts movement. Flow requires space. Detachment creates that space without removing intention. Most people misunderstand detachment as indifference or giving up. In reality, detachment is emotional maturity. It means you care about the outcome, but you are no longer emotionally dependent on how or when it arrives. Emotional dependence is pressure. Pressure disrupts alignment. When you are attached, you are constantly checking for evidence. Checking reinforces the belief that fulfillment is absent. The subconscious interprets this as lack. Lack delays resolution. Detachment stops checking. When checking stops, the system reorganizes naturally. Attachment is rooted in fear, fear of loss, fear of delay, fear of disappointment. Detachment is rooted in trust. Trust communicates safety. Safety allows expansion. Expansion is where flow exists. Flow is not something you force into existence. It emerges when resistance disappears. Resistance often hides behind attachment disguised as motivation. You tell yourself you are being driven, but emotionally you are afraid. The subconscious responds to the fear, not the story. Florence Scovel Shinn taught, that anxiety is a form of faith in the wrong outcome. Detachment withdraws faith from fear and places it in order. Order does not require micromanagement. When you detach, you stop demanding guarantees from life. Guarantees are impossible before manifestation. Demanding them creates frustration. Trust accepts uncertainty without panic. Detachment also changes timing perception. When attached, time feels slow and heavy. When detached, time feels neutral or fast. The same clock, different emotional experience. Emotional experience determines patience. Patience prevents premature action. Premature action is one of the biggest disruptors of manifestation. Acting too early out of anxiety can collapse progress. Detachment allows inspired action to arise at the right moment. Trust unlocks flow because flow requires confidence that movement will continue even if you stop pushing. Pushing implies fear of stagnation. Fear creates stagnation. Detachment does not mean passivity. It means relaxed engagement. You still act, but your actions are not fueled by desperation. They are fueled by clarity. Clarity only appears when emotional noise quiets. Attachment creates noise, constant inner dialogue about outcomes. Detachment quiets the dialogue. Money, opportunities, and relationships respond to emotional tone. Desperation repels. Calm attracts. Detachment produces calm. People who detach often appear lucky. They are not lucky, they are non-resistant. Life flows toward non-resistance. Detachment also protects identity. When you are attached to outcomes, your self-worth becomes conditional. Conditional self-worth creates emotional volatility. Emotional volatility disrupts consistency. Trust stabilizes identity. Stable identity allows consistency. Consistency creates reliability. Reliability attracts long-term success. Detachment also improves discernment. When you are attached, you say yes out of fear. When detached, you can say no without anxiety. Saying no preserves energy. Energy preservation is essential for flow. Exhaustion blocks intuition. Intuition guides flow. Trust does not eliminate effort. It eliminates strain. Strain comes from believing everything depends on you. Trust redistributes responsibility between you and life. When you detach, you stop narrating worst-case scenarios. That narration was instruction. Removing it removes resistance. Detachment allows outcomes to exceed imagination. Attachment limits outcomes to what you think is possible. Trust allows surprise. Many people unknowingly block bigger results by being attached to specific forms. They want money from one source, love from one person, success in one way. Detachment opens multiple channels. Life is efficient when trusted. It chooses the easiest path. Attachment insists on difficult paths because of familiarity. Detachment also neutralizes fear of loss. Fear of loss creates hoarding. Hoarding blocks circulation. Circulation creates flow. Flow requires movement in and out. Detachment allows movement without panic. Trust also improves communication. Detached people listen better. They respond instead of react. This improves relationships, negotiations, and collaboration. Detachment shifts focus from control to alignment. Control is exhausting. Alignment is sustainable. You cannot control life, but you can align with it. Alignment is enough. When attachment dissolves, gratitude deepens naturally. Gratitude without attachment is powerful. Gratitude with attachment is conditional. Detachment also heals impatience. Impatience is distrust in timing. Trust restores patience. Patience does not slow manifestation. It speeds it by preventing sabotage. Flow does not respond to urgency. It responds to readiness. Detachment signals readiness because it shows emotional capacity to receive without destabilizing. Life delivers what you can hold without panic. Trust unlocks flow because trust tells life you are no longer fighting it. When you stop gripping, movement resumes. Flow was never blocked by lack. It was blocked by fear holding on too tightly. You do not attract money, you align with the version of you who expects it, because expectation is identity in motion. Attraction suggests that money exists outside you, separate, distant, something you must pull toward yourself. Alignment reveals a deeper truth. Money responds to who you are being, not what you are wanting. The version of you who expects wealth does not chase it, question it, or overthink it. They live in a state where wealth feels normal. Expectation is not hope. Hope waits. Expectation assumes. The subconscious does not respond to hoping energy. It responds to assumed reality. When you expect something, you behave as if it belongs. That behavior sends consistent signals to life, and life mirrors consistency. Most people say they want money, but emotionally expect struggle. Their expectations are shaped by past experiences, cultural conditioning, and repeated disappointments. These expectations quietly dictate outcomes. You cannot outperform what you expect to happen. Alignment means matching your inner state to the version of yourself who already assumes support, opportunity, and flow. That version exists as potential, not fantasy. You are not creating something new. You are stepping into an already available state. When you align with expectation, urgency disappears. Urgency is a sign of disbelief. The expecting version of you does not rush because rushing implies doubt. Calmness implies certainty. Money moves towards certainty. It avoids instability. If your emotional state fluctuates between hope and fear, money reflects that instability. When your state stabilizes into expectation, money stabilizes too. Alignment also changes your tolerance. The version of you who expects wealth does not tolerate chaos, underpayment, or disrespect, not from arrogance, but from self-respect. That self-respect sets boundaries. Boundaries filter experience. This version of you also interprets events differently. A delay does not mean failure. It means adjustment. A setback does not mean rejection. It means redirection. This interpretation preserves expectation. Expectation also affects language. The aligned version of you speaks an assumption, not apology. This will work out. I'm supported. There's always a solution. These statements feel natural, not forced. When expectation becomes natural, behavior shifts automatically. You stop over-preparing. You stop explaining yourself. You stop accepting less than alignment. These changes invite different responses from the world. People often believe they need money to feel secure. In reality, they need expectation to feel secure. Money then follows that security. Security first, evidence second. Alignment does not require pretending to be someone else. It requires releasing the version of you that expects struggle. That version was learned. It is not permanent. The expecting version of you is calm, patient, and receptive. Receptivity is key. You cannot receive while gripping. Expectation opens hands. This version of you does not obsess over how money will come. Obsession is fear disguised as planning. Expectation trusts the route without needing to control it. When you align with expectation, you stop asking, will this work? And start asking, how do I stay aligned? That shift removes pressure. Money follows identity because identity determines perception. You notice opportunities aligned with who you believe you are. The expecting version of you sees doors where others see walls. Alignment also changes emotional baseline. You feel less anxious even before results. That calmness signals readiness. Readiness accelerates arrival. Many people delay wealth by trying to believe intellectually while emotionally expecting disappointment. Alignment requires emotional agreement, not intellectual debate. The version of you who expects wealth has already resolved inner conflict around receiving. Receiving feels safe. Safe things stay. Money leaves people who fear losing it. It stays with people who trust flow. Alignment is not about convincing yourself you are rich. It is about knowing you are supported. Support leads to supply. Expectation is quiet. It does not announce itself. It simply lives as certainty. When expectation is present, effort becomes effective. You do less but accomplish more because resistance is gone. Alignment collapses contradiction. When inner and outer move together, manifestation speeds up. You are not waiting for money to arrive. You are waiting to fully occupy the version of yourself who expects it without question. Once you do, money no longer needs to be attracted. It recognizes you. When you stop waiting for proof and start living from expectation, life no longer hesitates. What you align with quietly and consistently is what reality delivers next. Thank you.